Welcome, Sev. How are you?
Good, Dev. Thanks for having me here.
There are so many things to talk to you, and then you have a career of shifts and movements and then achievements and challenges and learnings. I think people will love to listen more about that. But before we go there, I think briefly talk about yourself, who you are, and your journey so far.
Yeah. Migrated from Russia in '97 and quickly learnt how to speak English at the age of 6 and fell in love with the sport of AFL. And I grew up in Perth for my primary school years. Loved football, loved being a kid, Russian mother, stepdad's is Australian. Moved to the Kalgoorlie at the age of 12. My mum got a teaching job there. She's an educator. And I spent my adolescent years there throughout the high school. I really enjoyed myself there as a country kid. Got to experience a third style of kind of culture, from an ethnic background to a city background to a country background. And then moved back to Perth and moved out of home at the age of 18. And I was fortunate enough to have mum's support, but I still had to, have my own keep. And I went all in with football and tried to, make AFL. In the first 5 years, I had some ups and downs in the career. And during that time, I realised, okay, let's get a better job than just being a labourer. So I got my personal training certificate at the age of 21. Did that for a bit. That was my first business. That was exciting. Ended up moving out of the gym into my home studio because I hated overheads and having a boss above me tell me what I can and can't do with my clients. And then during that time, I also started my education degree, Bachelor Secondary Education, specialising in sports and science. And within all that, I decided to finish up with football because I had too many injuries and I lost my passion. Didn't want to do any more rehabilitation sessions and lose out on it anyway. And then in 2017, I made the pivot to finish my degree and went into the school system, education system as a school teacher. And I actually ended up falling into maths as a maths teaching, even though I didn't study for it at school, at uni. I was a good maths teacher. My whole family has a history of mathematicians, so I guess it's in the blood. I really enjoyed teaching kids how to problem solve. I wrapped up my personal training around the same time I finished my degree because that was kind of like my cash flow at the time when I was studying. And it was great because I remember early mornings, I could choose my own hours. I would go to university and wouldn't have to do anything on the weekends if I didn't want to. Whilst all my university friends, they had to do like night shifts and bartending and things like that. Story for another time. Then at the turn of the decade, the kids in my class, they were interested in social media, video games, all the things. And I was always interested in what they were doing because that's how I built the rapport with the kids. Build the rapport, build the trust, and they'll be bought into whatever I have to show them or teach them. And that's when I discovered TikTok. Made a few videos, didn't think much of it. All this whilst I picked up my camera. And my camera, I picked that up at about 2015 when I had one of my first injuries that ended my career in footy. I had 12 months off. That's when I picked up the DSLR. And in 2019, I remember I fell in love with portraits, got into wedding photography, and I started doing that on weekends instead. Because what else was I going to do on the weekends since I wasn't playing sport or training anyone? And then my TikTok started to get more views. And I thought, okay, cool. Let's see if I can go into 2020 and just have a sabbatical. 1 year off without pay because I had my permanency by then, which was great. A government job that I can come back to and fall back into. So I had all the risk I could take with a contingency plan. And obviously 2020, everybody had the flu, and I couldn't take photos because there was no people to take photos of. And in that time, I also learnt more about the business side of things. TikTok had then asked me, someone on there saying, "What do you do on weekends, Sev?" And I said, "I do wedding photography." And I got 2 bookings from that video of me answering that question for someone on my channel. I doubled down on that, and within 6 months, I was booked out for 2 years as a wedding photographer. And by the time we were allowed out to do things again, I have doubled my income more than a school teacher would make in my wedding photography business. So by the end of 2020, completely out of the education system. Not that I didn't enjoy teaching students. I was not happy in the role that I was in and wasn't making enough impact to the capacity I wanted to. And I had a taste of the impact that was potential in 2020 during COVID, when I was at home and I live streamed a few maths lessons to the students, to the kids on TikTok. And it wasn't just my students, it was anyone that joined in. And I remember one specific week at the peak of lockdown, I had 20,000 students stream into my maths lessons on their phones. And not only that, they would send me the pictures or images of their notes they would take in the lesson. I didn't even ask them to. And I have all these images of students' notes saying, "Hey, I did this and did this and did this." And I would get comments saying, "Where were you as a school teacher when I was in school?" And that I was like, wow, this is my dream. I'm making this impact. But unfortunately, the impact that I was making then, for me, in a selfish way, was not covering my bills. And I didn't want to monetize the kids. Sure, I can do tutoring or I can get the parents to pay. But in terms of, and this is around the time I met you, through one of my mentors as well, saying, "What are you doing to buy your time back?" And I wanted to buy my time back as quickly as I could, so then I can become selfless. So that's been my kind of journey. And now, through the success of my wedding photography business, I have had brands reach out to me saying, "Can you teach us how you did it so we can do it too?" Now I have another company where I teach corporates and businesses how they can leverage social media properly and become self-sustaining internally without relying on agencies who are also full of crap. And that's my other disruptor that I'm doing. But that's a means to an end, because realistically, Dev, I want to go back to helping the kids. That's all I want to do. But just like the education system now, it's not equipped to help teachers really do their best.
Thanks for sharing your brief journey across multiple careers.
Thank you for calling it brief.
And being a young boy and then footy player, and then being the fitness teacher you were, and then from there pivoting to multiple other roles of your life. And one commonality is you are engaging with the youth of Australia in many ways, and then you have touched their lives. And then one key thing which you mentioned, that you want to know more about what they like, and then you want to support them, and that's what you ended with, that you want to support the youth of Australia. To start with, what's the primary lesson which the education system, before we go there, I think in the education system through primary and secondary schooling, what are the good things we have done and what are the not so good things we have done as a country?
I think the formative years in education are pretty good. They're pretty solid. Foundation years in primary school are pretty solid. Through the observation of when I was growing up, besides my personal observation in my specific primary school, I had a good time. And what I mean by a good time is I learnt the lessons that made me the person I am today. Do I speak on the entire every school? No, I had a good luck of the draw. But from my observation in other schools that I see, kids don't know what they want yet. And the primary school system, from my, again, observation, shows them what's possible. In a controlled environment, Could they do more practically? Absolutely. What I mean by that is, could they do more activities that get them exposed to more things of interest to them? Absolutely. What then that translates to is year 7, which is one of the things I think the education system did terribly wrong, is move year 7 into high school. They're too young still. Wasn't the right decision. Can they move it back? Probably not. That'll be another thing. But by the time the students head to high school in year 7, they're overwhelmed. And this is the feedback I get from them when I was a school teacher and from them themselves. They are not ready to jump into multiple teachers and all of a sudden all these new students from all these other schools. At that age, it's still a little bit too young. Let's say it is what it is. Year 7 onwards, I think the high school specific side of things needs to be really reevaluated. They're only just starting to get more into the technology side, and all of a sudden, here comes AI. All of a sudden, we're further back than we thought we were. Bring your own devices, good initiative, but the universities, they're not training teachers on how to deal with kids, with students on these bring your own devices. Again, I graduated in 2017. I haven't seen what the curriculums and the units are like at university now. I have talked to a few lecturers recently, and they said, not much has changed.
And with an experience as a student and as a teacher in the education system, and it's been observed from a data point of view, the literacy and numeracy levels as a nation of students have a trend, and it's a declining trend in comparison to other developed nations. What do you see is the prima facie factor? Because that's a lag indicator. Something bad has happened probably a decade ago to reflect the numbers badly now. So it's giving us a hint something. So what do you think on that front, which are the contributing factors beyond, yes, the numbers are the numbers, that we're not faring well in literacy and numeracy, but
So there's 2 primary factors that I could look into, that I would look into. Actually, there would be 3. The family dynamic of Generation X and Gen Y, more so the later stage of Gen X, who are the parents of Gen Z and some Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha being everyone born between 2010 and 2025. So we're about to finish that cohort soon. The family dynamic, there's a lot of financial stress, which leads to problems, arguments, divorce, and that's one cause of a broken family, quote unquote, where the child could not get the best scenario that we would experience. Like, I'm an immigrant. I never really grew up with a dad. My stepdad wasn't really there for me, but my mum carried. I don't see that many mums in Australia have that sort of strength as much as my mum had. Not trying to disregard the mums in Australia, but this is an ethnic thing as well. But the other 2 things that I think are going wrong are the technology itself, because of the overwhelming factor that both parents need to work. The child is put in childcare, or when they're not in childcare with the parents want to relax because they've been working a lot. They don't really have time to nurture the child. So what do? They put them in front of the TV. They give them an iPad. They give them their phone. It's all I see. So that's become more apparent over the last decade and a half. It's all I see. And kids go absolutely wild when the Wi-Fi doesn't work or the phone is battery's dead. Kids have no imagination. They have no creativity because the phone's there brainwashing them, saying, this is what you look at. When they look up in the world, they have social anxiety. They need some dopamine hit, and then all of a sudden everyone has ADHD, right? And then there's the diet as well. The diet's a huge factor, I believe. From the parents, I've done a bit of research in this, during the parents, before conception, it does matter what you eat. It does matter, and that does translate into the DNA of the child. And then obviously the habits of the parents translate during the nurturing stage after the child is born, for them to eat cereal, which is, crap. And from my observation, I grew up with all of that. I grew up with video games. I grew up with cereal and all of this stuff. But how come I still managed to, figure it out? Discipline. There's another factor. I don't feel like there's much discipline. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying bring in the cane or anything like that, but we're so far off keeping the kids accountable than ever before. I would have the kids come into the classroom and there is no respect. And when I would establish a routine, a system, some sense of accountability in them, eventually it would all be undone the next day. Why would that be? I did my research, I did my observations at school. Kids would come in and I would say, hey, you did such an amazing job yesterday. What happened today? And we would talk about it one-on-one. By the way, another factor, where do teachers have time to do that? Have that one-on-one conversation to really get them back into that, zone of respect and accountability. You've got 31 other students in the class who need your attention. All of a sudden it becomes a chaos. Especially at the school that I taught at last. They didn't even have student services. What kind of school doesn't have student services that can specialise in that sort of behaviour? The school expects the teachers to be able to do that. That's unrealistic. I remember a couple of cases, one in particular. My solution was always, let's get the parents in. Let's talk about it. I'm curious about the family dynamic. The parents would go, yeah, no problem. The day before we were meant to have a meeting, they cancelled. The reason was we have so much work to do. Case in point. You're choosing work over the important cognitive nurturing of your child who's clearly not getting enough attention back home and is expressing their frustrations in the classroom that I have very little time to manage. Especially when there's other kids who need to learn.
Yeah, one of the factors the first one which you talked about was the family dynamics of impacting. And then the reason, and then your broad vision is to support the youth of Australia and then be more accountable, be more dependable, do the right things and then be financially independent.
Yeah.
And then for that to happen and then for a country to prosper long term and to be living in a civil society and a democratic functioning society, we need the youth to have those skill sets which you talked about earlier. And if family dynamics is a key matrix or key contributor of the dysfunction or reducing the numbers of literacy and numeracy, which is one of the qualifiers of the long-term structures, how do you think? What are the further, if you go one layer behind the family dynamics, what's the reason why of broken families? What's happening there as a society? Where are we going in terms of having more broken families and then working families or joint families?
It's a cycle. It's an endless cycle. And the cycle generally goes all the way around every 4 generations from my, understanding. 4 to 5 generations. They say, I can't remember the quote correctly, but out of the weak become the strong. We're getting weaker. There's going to be a time where we need to do something about that, and we're getting closer to that time. But what got us here in the first place? It's the lack of understanding something like, let's start with financial literature. I see a lot of people stressed, who are my age, older, who don't have financial literature. They are in debt. They buy dumb things. They do not live within their means because they try to impress each other on social media. And then as they're busy trying to impress each other on social media, how do they impress each other on social media? Well, they need to buy the things to show off. They need to go to the restaurants to show that they can afford it. But they don't show that they're using their credit card. That's racking up the debt. They don't show their 9-to-5 job they hate to pay off that credit card. They don't show the fact that they are in the 9-to-5, they come home tired, and they can't give their kids full attention. They just show the materialistic things that they have. That's where people are going wrong. And the kids are suffering for it because of gluttony, greed. Everybody wants 4 or 5 investment properties. That's a different story. You're probably in a good situation with that. But I just see people more and more, and this is like, I'm a producer. I make content. I've got a lot of followers, but I've made that switch because I don't want to be in that bucket. I don't show off my things. I don't like buying things. I like putting my money into investments so then I can buy my financial freedom. And then when people go, how do you have so much time for your kids, Sev? Because I'm financially literate. And I think that is the one big issue. So we're talking about how to fix the problem, but how do we prevent it as well? So the upcoming generations need to learn all this very quickly. But for some reason, the education system is teaching them, you need to wear the right shoes, you need to come in on time, you can't go to the toilet during class, and you need to study religious ed, even though you're clearly not interested. And you need to get full marks to get your ATAR score to be able to get a good career. Or by the way, we're not going to mention that when you do get the good career, don't overextend your mortgage because you're going to be in the same situation as your parents. Nobody talks about this. And I think that is the key to turning this all around. Talk about that more. If Australia as a whole wants to succeed, future generations, because Australia is just a business. WA itself is vulnerable to mining, oil and gas, and China. China has a bad day. WA suffers specifically. You know, Victoria is more diverse, but that's another topic. How do we do things internally? How do we look after each other internally? We have to be accountable for what we learn and why we learn it, but also see the bigger picture down the line. No one wants to reverse engineer from the end because no one accepts the end.
Could you talk more on, because you have experience with the youth, and what do they think about when the word nationalism, being Australian, and then what it takes to live the Australian spirit or the ethos or the values? How are these conversations happening with the youth of Australia?
They're not happening. The kids, and again, please reiterate the question if I misunderstand from my answer. Being a nationalist, you know, having the Australian values, the realistic thing that I see is if you have a dream, if you want to live your best life, don't step on anybody else to get to where you want to be. Ask for help. Collaborate. If you collaborate with someone else and your intention isn't to, destroy them later, but to keep growing, you're going to succeed. And this is why I see the immigrants come in and they're more successful because they have a stronger family bond. They all collaborate with one another. It's all about keeping it in-house. But I see the non-immigrants, the second or third generation Australians, or beyond that, they're in a race to leave the house as quickly as possible, and the parents are in the race to kick them out as quickly as possible. Or, do your thing in the house, contribute to the house, but the kids don't want to do it. They want to just live in La La Land. What I mean by that is they can't wait to finish school and they think it's all rainbows and butterflies. So there's a dynamic there that's also broken. And I think with the cultural side of things, there needs to be more kind of examples of like someone doing it right.
So you're saying that we are letting the young people leave the house or the safety net before educating and empowering them with basic financial literacy, how to live a good life, and how to be responsible and accountable for your deeds.
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like the education system's trying, but it's outdated to the point where the kids don't understand the value of that, and the parents don't reinforce it. So by the time they finish, they have no idea how to calculate basic math problems to do with money, and they have very basic knowledge of how to talk to someone, communicate to someone. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to communicate in a way where things are resolved, and that all starts in the classroom. So yeah, and the parents can't wait to have the house back, and the kids can't wait to leave the nest. And by the time they leave the nest, they also realise, oh no, I'm in trouble here. I can't go back to the nest. Of course you can, but your ego says otherwise, because everyone on social media is going to judge you for failing. It's not failure. It's just resetting.
Yeah.
Parents would also say, oh, the kids are back. Damn. A lot of parents would go, yep, welcome back. Happy to help you out and reset. But I see a lot of that not happening. They'd rather be homeless than go back with their parents, because the dynamic was broken from the beginning.
Wow. You are a classic example of a small business which has changed and evolved, and then you did good in this segment of your videography business, wedding photography, and then you moved to the next, and then you pivoted again and again. And talk more on that, very the colloquial spirit, or the idea of shifting gears and then doing it good.
Yes.
And using what you have learned, and then bringing all of that together and maturing.
So from the start, I had being from Soviet Russia, as a kid, I didn't really experience the hardship of that. And we didn't grow up from completely nothing, Migrating to Australia, I had something called perspective. And that's what I think a lot of the immigrants have. They have that perspective of what life could be like somewhere else. So they're more grateful. I'm more grateful. And I think that has a purpose in why I've been able to go, hey, I could start a business. Let's do it. Did my personal training. Thought, wow, look, someone wants to pay me for me to help them improve themselves. Isn't that fantastic? My service for their money. That's great. Whereas in Russia, most of the time you don't get paid for 3-6 months at a time, and then you're left with bartering. My services for your services. And I still do that to this day, because I have a service called an influencer for their services or products. So I'm still kind of trading it. But having pivot all along, it's, for me, the mindset is do it or you don't survive. Or if you don't pivot and you aren't happy with your situation, for example, having the 9 to 5 that you're currently in, your mental health will start to deteriorate the further you stay in that job. Sure, you can say, I need to keep doing this, it pays the bills, all of that, great, but you're using half of your life at work when you're miserable, and then you're bringing that home. And I had this observation with my stepfather, who's a prison officer. He would come home and bring that energy home with him. I hated it. That's why part of the reason I moved out of home. And never looked back. But because of our situation, and again, full transparency, the investment house we have in Perth was vacant, and I would be able to live there. But at the expense of my mother, who sacrificed herself, who is still in Kalgoorlie, still teaching in the same school to this day. She's miserable. And I feel like I'm in debt to her to get her out, retire her, bring her here so she can just do her art all day, every day, and take over the grandkids' role when we want to hang out.
Very powerful. I think one very strong point of two things you talked about. One is the family dynamics, as well as you talked about your family situation. You lived in a pseudo fatherless household.
Yes.
And there was a father figure,
yes.
but was not a fatherly figure. I'm just trying to rephrase what you have told me.
He did. My stepfather did teach me a few valuable things, indirectly. He also taught me how to not be a father. And that's my agenda going forward. But I don't have it out for him. I now am destined to do better. Do I need his validation? Absolutely not. And I did have trauma growing up because every time I asked him for something, he would be seeming bothered. And to this day, it still affects me sometimes. I don't like asking people for anything. So I always just figure it out.
And I think, can you elaborate on that experience, not just yours, but living in a pseudo fatherless, or quasi fatherless household, and then you said your mother was strong to lead that and support you in that journey. But not every family is privileged enough to have one parent playing the role of the two, or 2.5, you may call it. So not everybody is privileged, and with the family dynamics we have been seeing in the last few decades of the Australian society changing. If you see census data, it's a very changing demographic of family structures in the last decade or two. How has that impacted the youth you are interacting with? And how has fatherlessness of, having challenged relationship with their fathers impacted the anxiety and everything else?
I mean, from my observation, and yes, I'm one example in my specific situation. I'm very lucky and grateful for my mother. I've had students that were significantly unlucky, where both parents were either doing drugs, or barely getting by, living in a tent outside of the house that they were allowed to be in the backyard of, in the tent, right? But how has this unfolded for the children, especially for the fatherless side of things? Start with the guys, start with the males, the men. They don't have as much masculinity as I remember growing up with my peers, my fellow students. They've become softer. And I think that is a detriment to society, because who's going to fix things? Who's going to fight when, an intruder comes in? Who's going to, make the decisions, critical decisions, with the critical thinking? So that's the male role. And again, from my upbringing, it's always been the male role. Now the girls, well, I'll just say two words. OnlyFans. Validation. And again, from my observation and for my interviews and my personal chats with a whole bunch of females who have OnlyFans, most of them, almost all of them, their father wasn't there for them growing up. Now, other people have said this before me, but there's a pattern there. And I'm all about patterns, recognizing patterns and seeing how do we undo it. The ones that have experienced that already, okay, we learn from those. The ones who haven't experienced that yet, hopefully they won't, we educate them on what could happen and how to deal with it to better your chances later in life when you become an adult. Obviously it starts with literacy and numeracy, but also self-awareness. You are the most important person to yourself. Your parents should only guide you. But if they're not there to guide you, you must research and find other means necessary to help guide you. And I was very lucky that I had that self-awareness from the start to go, right, my mum's here. She's obviously taken on the father role as well. but I found others and I measured them as great male role models for me, whether they were celebrities or they were, people in the community. But also, I just realized this now, when what the kids watch and who they aspire to, who their role models are, these guys and girls, they're making money for the wrong reasons. They don't really have much integrity. I don't see it. They're in the business of making money and only money, not to be a contributor to society. And hey, they don't have to.
Yeah.
But this is what's happening now on social media. I say to the kids, who's your favorite celebrity? And they go, Kim Kardashian. Great. How did she start? And what is she doing now that's helping you live a better life in the future? Oh, she's a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. Okay, how does that help you though? And then other guys, oh, I love Logan Paul. You know, he's got a product, a drink. He's doing boxing and all this stuff. I'm like, great. How has that helped you though? It's inspiring me. How is it inspiring you? Are you saying that you want to sell a product that has sugar and crap in it? Are you saying you want to fight other people? Is that your thing? Oh, not really. I'm like, so how are you becoming a better person by watching them? How can you take actions based off of the videos you've just consumed from them? They can't give me an answer. So not only do kids consume online, they're consuming rubbish. Now, I sound like the generation before me, but it's that cycle.
I think your insights are very, very direct. Your raw insights. You're talking to them, to the youth of Australia, very regularly. Yeah. You're interacting with them through TikTok and in all other mediums. You do that. And two things which you said in the last answer. The first part is there are higher chances, or if there's a functioning family, the self-awareness might come later, but it creates better citizens or better people who can do good and be good to others.
Yeah.
And what if we take a step up and then go a bit higher and then see from a 20,000 feet above that what is broken from a societal point of view, which has led to not many functioning families. The politics of it.
The thing that's broken is the moderation of what the younger generations consume. That's it. That's the biggest thing that's broken. The kids, like every second kid comes past me and wants to take a photo with me. Great. How do I monetize that? I don't want to. I don't want to sell them rubbish. I would love to make money for the right reasons from them by giving them education. But do they have the money to pay for it? No. Do their parents have the money to pay for it? Maybe. A lot of questions that I've been asking for myself. But what's broken is when I asked them, and this started happening 2-3 years ago, why do you want to take a photo with me? And they say, because you're popular. That broke my heart. The only reason why someone wants to take a photo with me is because I'm famous. And it broke my heart because it puts me in a category of all those people I don't want to be. Throughout my life, I've only disrupted because I've had a curious mind of why do they do it like that? Why can't we do it like this? Got me in a bit of trouble a few times growing up, but long term, I'm in the green disrupting because it's made an impact. Now I'm feeling I'm about to make one of my greatest impacts. Why do kids follow people that actually don't better their lives? It's because they're sucked into it. They're sucked in because everybody else gets it. It's like the popular kids at school. Why do you want to be friends with the popular kids at school when they bully you? It's the same kids that are now the celebrities. If you went up to the celebrity and wanted to hang out with them, do you think that they would actually be your best friend? No. When the cameras are rolling, sure. But realistically, they don't care about you. They only care if it gets them more views, or you buy their product and they say thanks, which will get them more views. That's it. So the thing that's broken here is what kids are consuming does not improve their lives. It helps them escape from reality. But we started doing that before the internet was mainstream, before social media was mainstream. We have sports. We vicariously live through teams who have no idea who we are. Why? Because it's a business model to get more memberships. Now, I love sports. It's a great thing. It's a great community. You know, it's inspiring in a way. But at the same time, you didn't win the premiership. The team won the premiership. And maybe you're a bandwagoner because you choose the right team who's doing well. It's the same with movies, you know. I love the arts. But at the same time, how are you getting better overall? There's now so many distractions that are stacked up, all on social media. New product coming out, new music coming out. Taylor Swift just released 31 tracks. Everyone's going to take a whole week off to listen to it. Take a week off what? Improving your life? Logan Paul's just released a thing and he's here. Everyone's going, yeah, I'm going to line up for 2 days just to get a glimpse. How's that improving your life? Oh, it's that one time, I'm obsessed with him. But it's everything together. Everything together is distracting the youth. And it's amplified through social media. You can call me a contradiction because I contribute. But that's where I made the decision now to go, my content needs to be something that someone can take away and use it to better their lives. And I think the more that happens without an agenda, the better the world will be in the future.
Wow. And one thing also in the one previous answer you talked about the youth is only focused on money, and then the focus is to make money, and there's a case to be made that we have lost on the journey to make money, the morality, the way you're taking a moral decision today, that yes, I can make money in many ways from here, but I choose to do what is right for the young and for the youth. So how have we lost that moral code? How might we bring it back, or how might we acknowledge that we need to work more on discussing the morality, and we should talk about the financial freedom, but with morality as well?
The first thing that comes to mind is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? At the bottom, everyone's pretty much covered, right? Just your basic things that you need. But for some reason, the pyramid's all over the place. Everyone's trying to, achieve self-actualization before they can even afford to buy bread for themselves. Okay, go be a monk. Go join the people in the temple, and you don't have to worry about it. You can just focus on that. But there's no Wi-Fi. Right? So everyone just needs to, and I hate saying everyone needs to, everyone should look into Maslow's hierarchy of needs and look at where they sit and what's important to them. Kids obsessed with money is not necessarily a bad thing. Kids obsessed with money and making it the wrong way is a bad thing. Whether it's something they don't realize is a lot of hard work. So we talk about uninformed optimism. I want to start drop shipping, or I want to be an entrepreneur at the age of 14. Great, cool. How much research have you done? Not much. Okay, let's begin there. And with the lack of research they actually do for what they think is cool or they think is going to make a lot of money, they're too busy getting their literacy and numeracy scores up, to get their ATAR score up, to get into the university degree, to finish the university degree, to then hopefully land the job that they think will get them that money with that cool thing that they're obsessed with. And by the time they get into that job, they go, this is boring, this sucks, I hate this, I actually don't want to do this. We have needed to start back at 14 before that journey began. Not to shut them down, but to get that self-awareness a little bit more tight. Start with, why do you want to make money? Because I want to be rich. Why do you want to be rich? Oh, don't have to care about anything else. All right, cool. How do you think you'll do that? play video games. Okay. Have you looked at a job that you can get paid for that where you play video games? There's many options. But they're like, no, I haven't looked at that. I'm like, so what do you think will happen over the next 6 years? It's just going to magically happen. You're going to start a Twitch channel. So that's the uninformed optimism. Let's say they do start a Twitch channel because they've seen their favorite Twitch player talk about how much money they've made. Now they want to do it. They start it and then they go to level 2, informed pessimism. Mm-hmm. Wow, I actually have to do this for 3, 4, 5 years before I get anywhere? I can't wait that long. Lack of patience. And then they go into the valley of despair, the valley of death, whatever you want to call it. And then that's where people give up and find something else. And they're constantly in that cycle because at the beginning, their self-awareness wasn't nurtured properly. So they feel lost. And it's like they're starting again and again and again. Sure, that's not a bad thing to do because you're finding yourself out. But I feel like if the education system focused on self-awareness more at the beginning, I feel like you'll have more success from the person, not about their academic literacy and numeracy, you know?
In these conversations, you're making very strong points on the asking the right questions and the role of mentors and the role of role models, which you highlighted that you had some, you found ones, but together role models are the ones which don't have the right methods of making money. And that's what you're arguing here, that it's good to have the need and the urge to make money, but it should be the right method, right source. And critically analyzing that in Australia, how many role models do we have, and then seeing what do they talk about and who they lean towards. Realistically,
I have a look at these role models in Australia and I just see a funnel. They just have a course that's probably outdated and they don't really care. The way that kids can prosper now is accountability. There's no accountability if it's just, here, pay $1,000, here's 10 videos from Kajabi, off you go. Good luck, hope you succeed, send us a testimonial when you do. It's just a rinse and repeat. Guess where that came from? The school system. It's the same thing. Yeah, enroll your student in this school. We've got literacy, numeracy. Yep, cool. They get enrolled. It's the teacher who's reading out of a book or a digital book. The same thing over and over and over again. And then they want to get their own education. It's the same thing. Hey, I've got a course. I've got survivor's bias of why I'm successful. I've won the lottery. And I'm going to sell you my course on how I pick the numbers. What's good there, right? You need role models in Australia that are continually adjusting and readjusting to now. Practitioners. Is the role model a practitioner? Is the role model still in the game? That's who you need, right? Someone that's done it and seen it all, cool. They can be a mentor. They can still be a role model. But as we go further and further into the digital age, especially with artificial intelligence, we need younger role models. And this is not me glorifying myself by any means. I'm just saying that a lot of people become out of date, out of touch really quickly because they pause their own thing and they go, right, now I need to capitalize and make money of everything I know. Guys, buy my course, buy my cohort, whatever. The ones that are always still keep going, they're usually not in that game to educate because they're still focusing, they're obsessed with it themselves. There's not many of those.
And the people you are interacting with, the youth who are, maturing in the age from, younger kids to the boys to in adulthood, how many you can observe and not how many as in what proportion of you can observe are becoming good leaders and good role model by themselves, and then picking up these skill sets of financial independence, being true to yourself, self-awareness, and then going on to be, pivoting to multiple careers or the career of their choice.
Again, it's a small portion. I have been fortunate enough to find a few and discuss things with them and see them prosper, which is good, but it's very few.
And from the journey of, and the long-term change in a functioning society happens through a political process. And then the more people who understand the people should be part of the democratic process. And how many of our younger people, in your experience, when you're talking to them, they are talking about the politics of the day, they are talking about the social issues of the day, they are talking about culturally we are going. How many of them are keen towards a stronger Australia, not just economically, but a stronger, cohesive Australia?
I mean, I could also say that those students that I don't see often are not in my demographic of audience. And that's why I'm trying to bring back the ones who need the most attention, the ones who are struggling, the ones who don't need much attention because they have a good family and they are doing well and they are, getting ahead. They have their self-awareness, financial fitness and all of the rest. There could be the ones that are talking about it. But me, I haven't really come across many. But that's maybe because that's not my audience. I can't give you a number or a statistic of how many of the youth talk about that and are serious about that and want to take the torch over the next 2 decades to be the next leaders.
And do you think, will there be a value of discussing through the education system, how many of our students have gone through the curriculum of civics or understanding the democratic process and the political process of this country?
My generation?
And the youth.
I mean, my generation, from when I was growing up, there was a lot of talk. There was I remember specifically when I was a school teacher. Again, this is just based off of that demographic and that geographical region. There was still a few, but not as many as I would think. I myself don't talk politics too often. I personally think that the last decade and a half in Australia has been a little bit, how do I say this without getting in trouble? Inconsistent. Just like the whole Kevin Rudd, Tony Abbott, Julia Gillard circus show. That's not what you do. That's not how you demonstrate that to the kids. And maybe that's where there was less interest because of the, overthrowing or coup or whatever they call it. That's what I saw. And I remember I was excited to vote. And now I just see it as I have to vote. I'm not excited to go, that's who I want to vote for next. Now I think, okay, I wonder who's going to win and who's going to be overthrown next, So why would the kids care?
And this generation, in next 20, 30, 40 years, will be in the parliaments, will be the bureaucrats, will be the senior leaders in large organizations. How might we instill or increase the level of intellectual prowess, increase the level of morality, not from a point of view you have to do right things, but the morality of acknowledging the other person rather than going on a rant, as you see, and then going on the offense and then being very strong and then fighting the fight?
I think it's like I see a lot of greed. I see like when you make your money, why do you need to make so much more? Like, because you want power, you want control. Why do you want control? Oh, because you want to make more money, right? I think if we look at that, I'm not saying cap however someone can make and become what's the word? Not capitalist, communism, not become communism. But know that like when you hit a specific point in your income, why do you need to, take control of, the media? Why do you need to do this? And again, I haven't really thought about it too deeply because I'm just doing my own thing and making the impact that I can make. Good. I have been asked, would you be interested in politics one day and making an impact within the politics? I'm like, absolutely not. That's my current answer. Because I see politics as whichever side comes in, they're just in the business to make money for themselves first. Again, I don't want to talk about conspiracies and, things that the state government's done over the last 5 years because I haven't done my research properly. And I've only just looked at it from what I've read and what I've heard. And that's where kind of that question is a full stop. But if I was in politics and if I was to see Australia prosper over the next 40 years, I would love to see more collaborative efforts, less red side, blue side, and more what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, and how can we come together? Instead of the elections coming up, they're putting a social media campaign to smear the other person and vice versa. And then who knows who's right. Whereas all of that time could be spent on how do we help the education system? One party goes, we can do this. The other party goes, we can also do this. I'm like, why don't you do it then? And then all I see, all these promises that don't happen. So I hear.
So I want to expand on that same question.
Yeah.
That if you were a politician and if you would be given the portfolio of Education Ministry, the Department of Education for the Commonwealth and the state, and in that wonderful world of the Department of Education, what would you do? Top 3 things.
In terms of how I would change the education system, as the Minister of Education, I would look into how do we nurture the self-awareness first, as early as possible. Listen to the children. Understand that they're growing, they're learning, they're discovering the world, but teaching them how to discover their world, not be put into a mould of what everyone else needs to be. A worker, a 9 to 5. The whole testing if a fish can climb a tree, thinking it's a monkey its whole life. Get rid of that. Standardized testing. I would reinvent that. How? Haven't really figured that out yet. But self-awareness first. How invested are you into this in terms of researching what you like right now? Then focus on financial fitness. So that's the second thing. Financial fitness, financial literacy. And that's where maths would be heavily skewed into. Kids don't want to learn Pythagoras. They do want to learn Pythagoras if they understand what it's for. And if what it's for is something they're interested in, like construction and engineering, awesome, let's keep going. But what about construction engineering do you like? That's the self-awareness part. Financial fitness is universal. That's something everyone should know. But for some reason, it's just like a short unit at 1/4 of a term. And if you don't like percentages, you're going to hate it. But if you expand on it, I loved doing financial fitness throughout the whole year with kids. Financial fitness helps you cover yourself as early as possible in your adult life, so that when your self-awareness goes, construction, engineering, I got my degree, I know Pythagoras off by heart, okay, I made some money, something I don't really want to do anymore. Oh, thank God I did the financial literacy thing because I've invested well, I've stayed out of debt, I've got an emergency fund, and now I can, which is the third thing, pivot and understanding how to move and shift into a different career. I was able to do that in my 20s without being financially free. Now I'm looking to become financially free so I can then educate the next chapter of my life. And I don't like educating if I haven't done it myself. How do we have teachers who finish high school, go straight into the university degree education system, the education thing, and then they graduate, they go straight back into school. They've been at school their entire lives, but they're the educators of our future. What do they know apart from what they've learnt in the books that are outdated? What do they know that can add to current things? What do they know about AI? What do they know about why kids are got mullets, vaping and riding e-scooters? What do they know about their practical side of the world? This is a science experiment. This is what you're going to do in the book because it's what I got taught at uni to teach you. The reason why I think I was more successful as a school teacher was because I had 5 years gap by the time I started my education degree. And I had 5 years of life experience that I could give as context, as an analogy to the kids. I was able to story tell better in my lessons in maths. I remember my door said, Mr. Moz's life lessons, featuring maths. And the kids loved that because they understood I was teaching them how to problem solve in the real world, not just give them algebraic equations. They still had to do those, but they had the story and the context and they were bought in first. I would go down that path and explore that path as an education minister. And then one more thing I would do is teach the teachers how best the students consume. And they consume by on the screen. They don't consume on your whiteboards. They don't consume to you in the real world because they were brought up with the screen in front of them. When they look up, social anxiety, back on the screen, headphones in. They've got all these things that they've been diagnosed with.